Hello and welcome to the Abundology podcast. My name is Renee Spears and I'm an abundance channeler and business mentor, and I help people be happy and have more money, love, time, and joy in their lives. I'm coming to you from a very chilly downtown Portland, Oregon, and this is the weekly energy update for the week of October 25th, 2020. Every Sunday, I talk about how the energy is going to be for the week ahead, and I also infuse the show with some positive vibes, so you get a little positive energy boost just for listening. So we have a powerful week coming up. The Taurus full moon is on Saturday, October 31st, and this is the second full moon of October. So making this a Halloween blue moon. And a blue moon occurs when we have two full moons in a calendar month. So the first full moon in October was on the 1st, and the second full moon, or the blue moon of October, falls on the last day of the month in the sign of Taurus. So this blue moon also happens to be a micro moon, which means it's further away from Earth than usual. And the moon may appear smaller and less bright. So micromoons are steeped in superstition, aren't believed to bring bad weather and natural disasters. Even though the moon is further away from Earth, micromoons are believed to have a greater influence on our moods. So on top of that, Uranus, the planet of awakening and surprising news, is conjunct to this blue moon, which means its energy will be very active. So whenever the moon and Uranus come together, there's always a chance that some shocking information could come to the surface. It can make you feel restless and anxious and impatient and jumpy. Like a sense of impending change can make it like really difficult to relax. And there is already definitely an air of election anxiety out there. I'm feeling it, and the people that I talk to, my friends, are definitely feeling it too. So all of this energy could lead to some really odd behavior, like impulsive actions and doing really bizarre things. So even accidents could happen. So keep that in mind if you suddenly find yourself doing something out of character. So to deal with this anxiety energy and this, I want to call it election anxiety. To deal with it, the best thing we can do is connect to the earthy, grounded stability of Taurus. So focus on nature, walks outside, pumpkin patches, raking leaves, watching the sunrise and the sunset, planting your winter plants. If you feel completely overwhelmed this week, go for a long walk out in nature. Don't think, just put on your shoes and your coat and go for a walk. You will definitely feel better afterward. And if you are really off balance this week, because this week does have the potential for that to happen, go for 2 walks a day. Or at least, the very least, go outside a couple times a day. This full moon falls on an auspicious night where the veil between dimensions is considered to be its thinnest. So October 31st is also linked to the Day of the Dead, which we know is celebrated in Mexico and Central America. And that dates back to the time of the Aztecs. And then on November 1st, we have All Saints' Day. And November 2nd, we have All Souls' Day. So Day of the Dead is celebrated really on all 3 of these days. And similar to the pagan tradition of Samhain, it's believed that on this night, on the 31st, the veil between the living and the dead is the thinnest. So when the veil between these 2 dimensions thin, it's easier for our loved ones to return to Earth and make contact with us. So having a full moon on this night can amplify the thinning of the veil, making it easier to connect. And even the influence of Uranus can help us to access these higher dimensions, because Uranus also rules over the awakening of our life force and our Kundalini energy. So if you have a loved one that has crossed over, this weekend, say a special prayer or do something to remind you of them. Eat their favorite food, listen to their favorite songs, light a candle in their name. Ask for a sign. If you want a sign from the other side that they're okay, this is the week where you will get it. So more about signs at the story at this end of this week's podcast. And if you really want to connect with the other side, this Sunday night into Monday night, the universe will be in your favor. So if you want to up your odds of communicating with ghosts and spirits, do it at the peak of the witching hour, which is every morning about 3 a.m. when the veils between our worlds are very thin. But beyond reaching out to our loved ones who have passed, this is a time to acknowledge the deaths, both great and small, in our lives. There are so many things that have died this year. And as I took a walk around my neighborhood this morning, just looking at the businesses that I went to all the time that are no longer there, just that aspect of my life, the restaurants and the businesses that have essentially died. And we've had so many things this year that have died. So we want to honor those deaths and know that everything that's lost eventually comes around again. It's the law of the universe that nothing is ever destroyed, it's only reborn. And nature is such a great reminder of this. Yesterday I took Jack out on an adventure to the gorge, so we drove down the old Columbia Gorge Highway and we stopped at Rooster Rock State Park. And I hadn't been on that old highway recently, and I was surprised to see all the new growths and spires that we had about 3 years ago. And like all of us in this area, I was devastated when the gorge burned. But here we are, just a couple years later, and it's starting to renew. So this unpredictable Halloween full moon has consequences also for the election. We know Mercury is stationing, meaning it's stopping, and it's going direct on election day. And it's also squaring Saturn that day. So following a full moon conjunct Uranus is worrying, to say the least. But then we have Mercury going direct, squaring Saturn on this day too. So this means that we could have a contested result, and there could be the risk of civil unrest, violence, rioting, rebellion. And Kara James talks a lot about this in the election podcast that we recorded a couple of weeks ago. So be sure to look for her podcast. I think it was actually, I know it was, number 100 of the Abundology podcast. So to recap, the full Hunter moon this year is a rare blue moon. And it's taking place on Samhain, which is also referred to as Halloween. And this cosmic event has the potential to be extremely powerful and life-changing for many of us. The moon is exactly conjunct Uranus, the planet of sudden awakenings and disruptions and deconditioning. But the flip side of all this, because I always like to look on the positive, the flip side is that we can also expect breakthroughs and new possibilities and spontaneously new paths opening up. All sorts of unexpected events during these days. So stay open to what unfolds. Keep an open mind and go with the flow. This is just all not gloom and doom. Do we want to prepare ourselves for the energy that we're feeling this week, that we could feel overwhelmed and anxiety about the election? Yeah, that's not a no-brainer. We're already all feeling that. But at the same time, the flip side of that is great unexpected things can happen too. So remember this week, if you're feeling overwhelmed or you have anxiety, then get outside for a walk and try not to just sit in the anxiety. Anxiety energy needs you to move it out. And you may need 2 walks a day this week. I know that I plan on doubling up on my walks this week just so I can remain a little bit more balanced. Just think about it. Just think about how great you feel after 1 walk and how wonderful you'll feel after taking a couple walks a day for this week. So this week's story is about signs, and that's why I'm mentioning that this week, because I love signs. When I was 31, my husband Larry died in a drowning accident. And to say that this event devastated me is an understatement. I was emotionally destroyed, and it was hard to just get through the day without crying. So during this time, I started asking for signs from Larry that he was okay, and I got them. I got hundreds of them. And this is actually what awakened me down the spiritual path. Before this time, I didn't even believe there was a God, and really honestly never thought about it. And then I knew there was an afterlife and there was more to this when Larry died, and I started receiving all these signs. But there are a couple of these signs that really stand out for me, because at the time I asked for them, I wasn't sure I was going to get them because the circumstances weren't conducive to signs showing up. It's pretty easy if you're home and you're watching something and it's your environment for signs to come through. But sometimes I've found if you're out in the world and you're asking for a sign, it's a little bit harder sometimes for those to come through. So one time I was at a furniture store buying a chair and it was taking forever. And I find myself getting ready to cry, and I didn't want to do that in front of everybody there, so I asked for a sign. And at that moment, over the store loudspeaker, I heard, "Paging Larry. Larry, you have a message." The other time, I was on a train back from Seattle, out in the middle of nowhere, and I was feeling horrible. And I asked for a sign thinking there's no way I'm going to get a sign on a moving train. But about 3 minutes after asking for the sign, the train stopped at one of the little small towns that it stops on its way back from Seattle. And there was a truck parked right outside the window that I was looking out the train. And the side of the truck said Larry's Produce on it. So I knew that was my sign. So this week, ask for and expect signs from those who have passed. The veil is thin, and now is the time to receive them. So as always, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you next week.